Hey, what's up guys, Totallydubbed here, and today I'm doing a video review on the AOC AG352UCG. What a mouthful. Now this is a 35-inch curved widescreen monitor that has a 1440p resolution. Now before getting to the specs, in terms of pricing, you can find it on Amazon.co.uk for £720 and on Amazon USA for just $900. So it is a very expensive monitor. Now getting into its specs, now as I said, it's a 35-inch monitor. It runs at a resolution of 3440 times 1440. So you've got a beautiful display right there. It has an MVA panel, at least according to Amazon and from what I'm aware from previous AOC monitors. It has a 4 milliseconds quoted response time. It has a 100 Hz refresh rate, so up to 100 Hz refresh rate. It has NVIDIA's G-Sync within it as well. So if you've got NVIDIA graphics card like I do, which has got the GTX 960, then you'll be able to run tear-free gaming, which is fantastic. In terms of other specs, they'll be listed in the description below, so make sure you check them out. You'll probably want to know you've got a DisplayPort input and a HDMI input. I would suggest a DisplayPort if you have it available, which you should do with any modern day graphics card. You've got a 3.5mm jack output for the headphones, and you've got two USB 3.0 ports, one of which is fast charging capable, and you've got two microphone 3.5mm jack outputs as well. They can be found underneath the monitor. On the right hand side of the monitor, you've got a little arm which is useful for putting your headphones on. Now, going into the build quality of the monitor, other than what I've just said, you've got a reasonably thin bezels. At least for a monitor this size, it is quite thin. I didn't notice any sort of problems with glaring, even though it's got a glossy panel on the sides. You've got a customizable LED strip, which is found underneath the monitor, and you've got a kind of like a wing almost at the back, which has also got a RGB color, so you can go green, blue or red, no matter the preference, and you can through the OSD you can customize its luminance, or you can completely disable it if you so wish. The monitor can go up and down, and you can tilt it backwards and forwards. Do bear in mind it is a massive monitor, so as you can see right there, I have hardly any space to maneuver on my desk, so you will need a big desk. And speaking of which, the stand is also relatively big. It just fits on my IKEA Friday desk, so do bear that in mind if you're also going to be purchasing the monitor. In terms of pivoting, you can also pivot it as well, but you can't rotate it, which is pretty obvious given the size of the monitor. Now the monitor has a curvature. The curvature is relatively small, but it is noticeable if you're sitting right in front of it. You do get a little bit more of an immersion on the sides. I didn't notice any sort of clipping or any problems on the edges of the screen. Previously I'd reviewed another AOC monitor, and I noticed on the edge of the screen you'd lose text. This is not the case with this monitor, so it's fantastic. You've got no problems with viewing angles on the side of the monitor. Other than that, the build quality, I've absolutely got no complaints. Very much impressed with it. And just to add the icing on the cake, you've got a handle at the back of the monitor in case you want to carry around this absolute beast. Now talking about its panel quality. So I did talk about viewing angles, and it's something I do want to mention. Now viewing angles are good. They're fantastic. I can go from anywhere, and I didn't have any problems. However, I do notice a very slight color shift when I'm moving from left to right. Less so when I'm going up and down, but left and right I do notice a difference. It's very slight, but it is noticeable, which is slightly a shame. But at the same time, if you're going to be sitting at your desk and looking straight at the monitor, I don't think you have too much problem. But that does mean that when you are looking straight at the monitor, as it's a massive 35-inch curved monitor, the sides over here aren't going to be as color accurate, at least to your eyes, versus the one that you're going to see in the center. Now I did check its backlight bleed. I had very minimal backlight bleed for a monitor of its size, so I wouldn't worry about that. I also checked its uniformity. Its uniformity is relatively good throughout the whole monitor. I didn't have too much problem. I had a less uniformity on the top left hand side of the monitor, so do bear that in mind. However, given the size of the monitor and what it is acceptable. Now it's color reproduction. Now I must say, when I straight away got it out the box, I was a little bit disappointed because it looked a slightly little bit washed out. And that is what I found when I put it through a calibrator. I got a delta E, an average delta E of 1.84, which isn't great, but it's not that bad either. In terms of the human eye, and in all honesty, I don't really like using calibrators. When I looked at it myself, I just did feel that it was just lacking that sort of popping color that you'd expect. Deep blacks weren't there, so for example in this shuttle image you should get some deep blacks over here. That wasn't the case, and you should get some very bright whites and accurate whites over here. Instead they're a little bit overexposed. Going through different images, this image is a fantastic shot, but it should be really much popping in terms of color. When I compared it to an IPS or PLS panel, colors really do come out quite a lot. Unfortunately over here it just seems subdued. There's nothing wrong with it, it just seems subdued when you compare it to other monitors out there. And again, this sort of shot, the green should be very, very green and dark green. In fact, it's just a little bit of a light shade of green. So if you hadn't looked at another monitor, you'd see it's absolutely perfect. Or if you come from a TN panel, you'd feel it's absolutely fantastic. However, when you come from an IPS or PLS panel, you will notice the difference. So not to say it's a bad monitor in terms of color reproduction and the color accuracy. However, I would have liked it to be a little bit more popping in terms of the eyes. And in terms of the OSD, I've got it on user setting with everything I think set to 65 if I'm not mistaken, because that is what sRGB calibrates to. And when it's in sRGB mode, I must say its maximum brightness is locked at 90, whereas in user mode it goes up to 100. So I use it on user mode, and I felt these settings were the best in order to get the best out of the monitor. So that is what I thought about the panel. Now what about its gaming performance? And yes, this is the most important part of the review because you'd be buying this for gaming. Now in terms of gaming, I must say in terms of the response time of the monitor, I was not too impressed. When I say not too impressed, it's not exactly bad, but the reason behind that is because of its overdrive setting. Now if I put overdrive setting to, if I put it to strong, then its response time of the monitor is actually relatively good. I noticed it quite responsive in terms of how the monitor responds to my actions. However, I do notice a lot of overshoot. So there's a lot of inverse ghosting, which potentially you might see on this wall over here. It's going black and coming back to its normal brick color. And I must say it is very noticeable, and if I was playing either competitively or casually, then I wouldn't be using this monitor on strong overdrive setting. However, I felt the best midpoint was going on medium setting. It felt that like I got the best of both worlds, and in this case the response time wasn't as fast, but I didn't notice much overshoot. There is very slight bit of it, but it's extremely well, you can hardly notice it to the point that you would find it acceptable. So in other words, if you're going to use this monitor for gaming purposes, use it on medium overdrive setting. Now, what do I think? Now, I wouldn't use this for competitive gaming. I don't see anyone who would buy this type of monitor for competitive gaming. It just doesn't make sense, and it's just not as responsive as you'd like. Yes, its input lag is relatively low, and I must say it's quite impressive in terms of how it responds to my input. However, nevertheless, the response time would probably put off most competitive gamers like myself. On the plus side, when it comes to viewing it, due to its resolution, if you're a casual gamer, then you'll find it to be very nice to look at. So for casual gaming, its response time and its input lag is very much acceptable, and I didn't have too many problems whilst using it. So in all honesty, when it comes to gaming, if you're a casual gamer, I think this monitor is pretty much fit for a casual gamer nevertheless, but I think it'll be more suited for a casual gamer's needs. Rather than a serious competitive gamer who is playing something like Counter-Strike, then it would just be not the right monitor to pick, unless you are a very low level or if you don't take things too seriously. So that's pretty much it. It is a decent monitor. It's not amazing, but it's a decent monitor. It does relatively well in terms of its colors. It does relatively well in terms of its build quality, its design, and its looks, and its just generally how it feels and looks on the desk. And in terms of gaming, I would say yes, it's perfectly acceptable for casual gamers, but it's not an amazing gaming monitor. So It's a little bit of a hit and miss, but nevertheless it's still a good monitor and I would recommend it. It is very expensive, but do bear in mind that you are getting a lot of pixels for the price. Often you'll find a 1080p monitor competing at like £500 to £600. This on the other hand isn't as cheap, but that said, you are getting a ridiculously high resolution. Okay, it's not 4K, but it's as good as you're going to get. Plus you get 100 Hz, which I can confirm works flawlessly without any frame skipping as well. So there we go, guys. That is pretty much it. If there's anything I've missed out, make sure you leave it down in the comments below and let me know. Like and subscribe this video as it always helps, and favorite and share as it helps the channel to grow. Alright guys, I've been Totally Dubbed. Take care and bye-bye.